Hey there, Superior Shave fans and other humans. How you doing today? On the 16th of May of this year, I went to the Thiers Issard factory. First, we started off in their showroom where they have one of everything. Every single knife and razor that they make, all in one place for you to look at. Look at these beautiful handles there. That blue and white micarta is gorgeous, isn't it? Somewhere on that wall, there's a dough scraper. I got to get that thing in my life. Can't go through life without the best possible dough scraper. Eventually, I asked them about the historic folding knife that's germane to this area, Laguiole, I think it's called. And here's some of those historic knives on a display. That's the original founder's blacksmith's tool. The company was started in the 1860s. There's some vintage razors. Look out on the wall here. We have a picture from 2007 with a big old caudicle. You can be sure that was slightly convex. That's what they did back then. And now they use just wheels. We'll get to that later. Here we are talking about the various ways that it goes from the forged blank of steel into the finished razor product. Not all of the heating up stuff happens at the factory there. They take it down the road to a place that specializes in that. And they don't do any forging. That's not something that's done anymore. Forging and grinding is kept separate in the razor business at this point.
For one range of blade, which is Châtellerault, it's another type of carbon.
Yes.
You know this. The steel is very old.
Yeah.
It's a crucible cast steel, and the quality is top quality.
Yeah,
it has no impurities at all. But the thing is, grinding must be by hand for this particular.
For the Châtellerault.
Oh yes.
Châtellerault, that's a limited edition they have right now.
Few stock because it's a limited
I saw
series, you know.
When Mr. Loft ran it, he would go find little pieces of steel all the time.
The old managing director, he used to love to find random odds and ends and make short runs. They haven't done that, as far as I know, for 15 years for the razors.
A little bit of stock somewhere because
They think of him fondly. This is the current ownership, and they remember him well. He's retired.
oh, 1990s? Oh, that young, okay.
Now we're getting a little bit of a history lesson. This is actually a true family-owned business. This is the 6th generation, I believe. Is that right? This is the 5th generation running this company, and it started in the 1880s. And we're looking around all the various beautiful things in the showroom. In just a second here, we're going to matriculate to the factory. Now, the factory is really loud. I would say 70% at least of the square footage is to things that you straight razor crazy people aren't going to really care about. So there's a lot of machinery going on for those parts. I didn't show those parts, but they kind of dominate the audioscape of the place. So most of this stuff is muted, and I'll just talk over it. Every now and again, you can get a piece of audio footage that's good enough. These is forged blanks that are going to become knives. First, we're starting off with this man patiently drilling a hole by hand in the pivots for the resin and other handles of the little folding pocket knives. All done by hand. Can you imagine that? I love all these wheels they have. Look at how many different wheels they have. Some of them have something that goes on the outside. Some of them you scrape right along the edge of the outside. There's wheels from the early part of the 20th century. Look at that carborundum thing. How old is that thing? And they had some that were made of leathers too. This is a knife that is used to kosher butcher a poor little calf. Sorry, calf, but yeah, that's what it's for, all right. Look at this beautiful press. They only have 2 full-time straight razor grinders. That's one of them. He's been doing it for 8 or 9 years, and they do use a straight razor occasionally. They're not always use a straight razor guys like I am, but they do use them. That's good. Now we're going to start by looking at the forged blanks of steel, which have not been hollow ground but have been hardened. So at this point, they're hard, brittle pieces of steel that are ready for hollow grinding. Then they do the hollow grinding, and then they do the tempering and quenching so that it becomes elastic. At this point, when you tap them, they make a pinging noise, and if you drop them on the ground, they would shatter. But they'll become elastic and strong later. These are various different blanks that we're looking at. They have a 4/8 historic one. That's cool. And that's that historic one in the biggest size. Get one of those if you can. And now we're on to this really cool press machine that stamps the Thiers Issard stamp. All by hand. It's putting in the trademark, which is also a guarantee, and it's also straightening up the blades to mate with that form. It's a really old machine. All the smoothing and polishing and even doing the file jumps, they do that by hand, if you can believe that. That's the special antioxidation fluid, and now we're on to the hollow grinding machine, which is from before World War I. I guess only the wheels wear out because everybody's using a really old one in this industry. You've got two wheels. You got a little thingy that holds the razor flat between the two wheels, and you can vary the spacing of the wheels as well as their speed and, of course, the size of the wheels. Look at them old belts. And the little antioxidation fluid runs around with a pump of some sort. That's it. It hasn't meaningfully changed since well before World War I. And this actual machine is that old. These are the various stages of hollow grinding from left to right. When they're done with that step, there's grooves still on the razor from the hollow grinding, so they have to go to this other machine, which fine-tunes the surface, gets rid of those grooves, gets rid of any little variances in hollow grinding. You could see it was opposite threads because the wheels spin in opposite directions. They put the little schnozzle on there, get the razor, and then it hangs on here for, I don't know, quite a few minutes per blade, I would say. This one is historic and hand forged. This is not forged by a machine. That's how the shoulder curves this way. Yeah, sometimes they still have hand forged blades, which means a person is sitting there smacking the hot cylinder with a hammer by hand into the die as opposed to a drop forge hammer. It's a slower process, but it supposedly makes a better razor, and it has little eccentricities to it that are unique to hand forging. When they're done with all the hollow grinding and labeling and polishing, they put the finished products in this case here, and then they await the purchases and mate them with the scales. So here's all finished products in various sizes, trademarks, gold on the back, whatever, all that kind of stuff, waiting for the orders to come in. Beautiful pistachio wood, quarter sawn. Now they're going to do the satin matte finish, what they call 275. First they put that chunk of polish on this little baby wheel, and they get that backer going, and he sits there and rides this wheel for a little while to get a nice uniform satin matte finish. Both sides get satin matte, and then if the razor says 889, the front is brightly polished. If it says 188, both sides are brightly polished. Now on this other step, they're getting rid of any little burrs or eccentricities on the tang, the tail, the shank, the shoulder, the toe. This part took forever, so I sped it up. But I swear to you, they were spending 5 minutes on a blade. Just imagine they have to do that on each single blade that they sell. Quite a lot of labor in this thing. So all the razors get that part, and then optionally they get the bright polish. I like the bright polish myself. It adds a bit of labor, and it's a separate step. Different wheels, different abrasives, so on and so forth. So this is the satin matte finish. And now we're going to the machine that does the bright mirror finish. If your razor says 889 on the box, it has that finish on the front and satin on the rear. If your razor says 188, it's got the bright finish on both sides. If it just says 275, it's satin matte on both sides. I don't know what this little baby wheel does. I should have asked, but I guess that's more of the stuff that you've got to do to make the bright mirror finish. Here we have the bright mirror finish shown on the front. Now this is work on the scales. They do all the woodworking themselves in factory, and they buy what's called noble wood. Noble wood means that it's more inert. The wood blank is larger than is necessary and is aged for a while so that it becomes impervious to variances of temperature and humidity. They don't put any sealant on that. They're just polishing the crap out of it so that it has a natural luster and a natural resistance to moisture and temperature, humidity extremes, so on and so forth. The resin scales, a lot of the resin scales they do there. Now if it's got the ornate design like the Barber or the Compostelle or the Map of France, that's something that a specialist that only makes handles for them does, and they buy the completed scale. Otherwise, they're doing all the work themselves. Every wood, every basic resin one, like the basic Thiers Issard, plain Jane black resin handle, they're putting it through all these processes, if you could believe that. And later on, you'll see with the white handles, they're just pinning the white handles later in this video. But they got to do all these other steps, and then they're going to go to the little completed scales zone where you can see all the beautiful completed scales. I would love to go through this drawer and pick out all my favorites. I'd be a kid in a candy store with that thing. I love me some wood scales. These are the resin blanks. And that big old black thing's got all the wood scales in it. The white one is the man-made scales, I suppose. And when you open up those drawers, you'll see a bunch of completed scales that are awaiting pairing with the razors that were in those other drawers and when they get the orders. This part I think we shot out of order. Yeah, we did. They first sand the inside edge of the non-pivot pin part of these scales, and then they put on an adhesive, pin the wedge in. Actually, not pin. They just squeeze it with that little squeezy thing, and then let it sit for half a day. And then they pin it later. think I have some footage of the sanding part. Let me see here. Yeah, there we go. So sanding, adhesive, the wedge, and it is a wedge. It's not a parallel spacer. It's a little wedge that's shaped like a rectangle. I don't know how they get off the excess. I don't remember seeing that part. Maybe they go grind it off with the wheel and it comes off easily. You got me. But that's it. They wedge it, they squeeze it, they let it rest, and then they're going to pin it in the next step. But this is before the polishing, honey. This is after they polish it. Look at this cool pinning station. With a little anvil and everything. They're talking about the French Elvis Presley I've never heard of. I asked them if they've heard of Kanye West. He's our new American Elvis Presley. They had heard of him. Here we are watching them pin by hand. The whole thing. They even crimp it by hand. In Germany, they had a little thing with their foot. They would stomp and a prescribed amount of metal would come off of that silver pin. They're just crimping it by eyeball and pinning it, but damn are they good at it. Their scales are very tight, not too loose anywhere. The uniformity of the tension, the centering, all that stuff is really highly regarded on the Thiers Issard, in my opinion. You crimp it off by hand each time? You take off the excess of the pin by hand?
No. Machine? Ah, the excess. Ah oui, est-ce que le surplus de rosette là, enfin, tu l'enlèves en fait? Il y a un surplus.
There's no lever. In Germany, they go like this.
Oh, yeah,
and the piece chopped
right.
off.
Ah, si une rosette qui tombe, je vais la ramasser.
Yes.
Get a video. That's it. Just 100% handmade work by somebody who's done it thousands of times. I guess that's what you want, right? Now we're on to the sharpening. This is the cool part. Things have changed a lot in the 15 years since I knew the old managing director. No more convex natural stone of Pyrenees slate. You would have to have a lapidary that would make that thing in the first place. Now these are commercially produced spinning discs, spinning in opposite directions. This first one is grooved and a little bit raised, so it cuts in a little bit to the razor, but it is essentially flat. And they have 5 different steps of wheels. They're always, the spinning faces into the razor at all times. That's why they have 2 wheels and they're spinning in opposite directions. Now in the next step, they use a diamond abrasive, a fluid of diamonds, but we couldn't really show that part because they had to put a cover on there and you wouldn't see the wheels. But imagine those red things had a lot more fluid and it would be splashing everywhere. And then 2 more steps, just like that. He goes to the strop with the paste and then the plain strop, and he's got a plain strop that has no nicks on it whatsoever. Now we're on to the lady that cleans up the razors and makes them all pretty for you for packaging. She probably does this thousands and thousands of times a year. Pretty good at it. And then eventually we get to the hilarious ending of this video.
The premium time of the razor, there used to be
talking about me and my crazy invention. I gave them one.
Diameter.
I hope they like it. They didn't ask to be on camera for this part, so I blurred it out. But I'm talking about how the old owner taught me about convex stones, not the owner, director. Taught me about convex stones and concave bevels.
I thought to myself, what if we had a shape that was like an old wheel? So this is to shape a stone. When we change the size of the wheel, we're changing where in the triangle we're touching.
Oh, so it's kind of your invention.
Yeah, it is an invention. It is an invention. It's an
It
invention.
is technically an invention.
Our market is so small.
Well, there you go, guys. Thanks for watching.